I would imagine like there's some common challenges that you see companies struggling with time and time again. What are some of those?
A lot of what we're having discussions with companies now is like, okay, like let's look at channel diversification. How do we mine the next pocket of growth? How do we unlock new audiences?
So you currently co-lead the generative AI practice at H.I.G. How do you see it impacting growth and marketing in the short term and the mid to long term?
We tend to overestimate the impact in the short term and underestimate the impact of new things in the long term. And I think that's incredibly true, especially with generative AI.
Hi, and welcome to Growth Talks, where we dive deep into the world of growth and marketing with industry leaders. I'm Krystina, the General Manager of Offline at Right Side Up. Today, we're chatting with Mark Fiske, who's an operating partner at H.I.G Growth, focused on marketing and digital transformation. He also co-leads the generative AI practice. At H.I.G, he works with portfolio companies to develop and build comprehensive marketing strategies that include customer acquisition, lifecycle, monetization, infrastructure, brand development, and user experience. Prior to joining H.I.G, Mark helped co-create the growth marketing program at Reforge. He was the VP of marketing at Credit Karma, and he led online and offline marketing at Ancestry. He also helped build the global digital marketing function at Gap. In this episode, we're going to get into how and why Mark made the transition from marketing executive to operating partner and how companies can leverage generative AI. So thank you, Mark, for joining me, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to get right into it. I feel like your path is one that some people take and some people kind of like go between the two directions. So you started your career leading growth and marketing at a bunch of different companies, and now you help companies build those same marketing strategies and organizations and your current role as an operating partner. So like, how did you get to where you're at now, and what made you want to transform into an operating partner?
Yeah, I think I started like a lot of people, like you hear the analogy of like a classic T-shaped marketer. I kind of like got my niche in search back when search required, frankly, we had VPs of search back in the mid 2000s because it was a relatively complex practice, and kind of used that as like a springboard to get into other things digital, right? So went into performance digital channels, like what's the next natural and adjacent thing I can kind of take on. So when it was agency side, I had the opportunity to kind of take on display and learn conversion optimization and other affiliates and other marketing channels. And then over time, kind of just continued to build on that across like adjacent marketing functions as well. So retention and other areas that allowed me to grow in my role. I think everyone kind of gets to a point where they kind of got their marketing specialization. And I was like, hey, I'm really good at joining a company at, call it $100 to $300 million of revenue and scaling it to $1 billion plus, and really professionalizing and building out a growth and marketing team. And I really enjoyed it, but it was also like, I'm going to have to switch jobs every like 4 years. There's a point when a company gets to a certain size and you become like a professional offsite attendee more so than you become a marketer. And I was like professional offsite attendee and HR manager, because that's what happens when you hit a certain scale. And I was like, how can I figure out, do what I like to do best, like helping companies grow, but do it in a way where I want to quit my job every 4 years? And a recruiter hit me up, and it just so happened that they're like, we got this weird kind of thing. I don't know, would you be interested? And I was like, this could be really cool. I'll either be here like 6 months or 6+ years. And we're on year 5, so the latter.
Oh my God, I love that. Now I know what you mean, because everybody has a favorite stage of company, and there's no like right or wrong answer, right? Like some people are like a 0 to 1, make me your first marketing hire ever, I'll do all of the things. Other people are like, don't talk to me unless I'm managing a team of 20. And then there's like everything in between. So I just love that you've figured out what your favorite stage is and why.
You really have to be intentional about it, because I feel like so many times you're in like a career conversation with somebody and they're just like, more title, more money, more people managed. And I was like, is that really what you want? I think people are a lot happier when they take a step back and are like, what do I really want? Do I really want to manage people? Like, when am I happiest? And then optimize for that, you know?
Yeah. It's the old like individual contributor versus people manager route. I know a lot of really, one of the shows that we've got coming up is a show with this absolutely brilliant woman who just climbed the heights and went all the way to where, and she was just like, okay, I don't want to do this no more. Like I miss doing the actual work, and I miss working with people at more of a granular level and having my hands on. It's so easy to forget that like what you do is marketing and not, to your point, professional offsite attendee and HR manager hit a little close to home. I'm not even gonna lie. Cause like there's days where like I'll look at a piece of podcast copy or look at a report and be like, oh, right, I know things. Cause days can go by where you're like, I don't know, what do I do here? Like,
wait, so be honest, Krystina, when was the last time you were at an offsite?
Last week. Excuse me, who is interviewing who here, Mark? It is funny though, because I think on the flip side, I could totally see this being something where it's like, well, unless I work for the company itself and I can really get into it and I can really dive in, like what makes a good operating partner? Because you're kind of coming in and out, right? Like I'm assuming you're coming in and out at the same time with like several different brands, or are you like truly immersed at the time?
I think it depends, and different firms have different models. Some have the like almost like I'm always an interim type model, and I've definitely done the interim CMO type work in the past. But in a perfect world, you're balancing levels of involvement based on need across the portfolio and the current time. I would say like I've seen people join in operating roles at other firms and even at H.I.G, frankly, and ultimately just not have the impact that they thought they were going to have. And I think there's a big difference. Like being the smartest person or having the answer is not actually a good thing necessarily. Ultimately, people need to realize that the job's about change management, and that requires you to work with people, and people want to work with people that are fun and engaging, and you can joke around with them and get to know them. And I think sometimes people approach it too clinically, and there's like this allergic reaction that people have. Because I think in consulting, your company's calling someone up and saying, I need help. And in this role, sometimes you have people that are really excited to work with you, and that's awesome. And sometimes you have people that are kind of like, get off my lawn, like I know my thing. And you're kind of like, great, but I think I might be able to help in a certain way. So I think figuring out what people value and then positioning them to be the winners is hugely important. It's never like Mark unlocked X dollars. This portfolio marketer did an awesome job. They did the work and they've got the results to show them. Let's make sure that they're elevated for the awesome work that they're doing. And yeah, you might have helped them kind of like get the resources or the, think through it, but it's about them. It's not about you.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're kidding about being an HR manager aside. I feel like the best thing that people managers can do, somebody early in my career was like, I get credit for all of your successes, but I take credit for all of your failures. And there's something of like, it's okay either way. Like we're going to figure it out either way. So like, it sounds like that kind of prepared you for managing these situations. Also, I'd imagine like you probably had a ton of experience working cross-functionally in marketing and just like managing different stakeholders. Like, did that also prepare you for operating partner life?
When I was getting into this role, I was like, oh, finally, I'm never going to have a conversation about whether or not we can ramp investment in brand search ever again. And then immediately I was like, oh, how naive I was. Yeah, because you're working with not just fellow marketers, you're working with CEOs, COOs, and then you're working on the investor side too. Like people that are wicked smart, but they think about the world in a certain way. And it's your job to kind of help translate marketing speak to like business impact and what to expect and how to actually bake it into like a model. So it's a very different way of engaging and talking with people.
No, that makes sense. And I think like it sounds very similar to a marketing role. What are some of the differences between what you used to do and what you do now?
Yeah. Analogy a colleague used once, which I really liked, is like it's like going from being a parent to being a grandparent. I think good marketers want to put numbers on the board. Great marketers want to own the number. And it's tough because you own or directly control the number. So I'd say that's probably the biggest difference. I had a little bit of budget ownership anxiety maybe when I first started because I was used to kind of like, this is how I create value and you demonstrate value to my boss or to those around me. And I just didn't have that, right? So that got kind of tricky. And I'd say that's probably the biggest difference, like the ownership piece versus like traditional marketing. I'd say the other thing is just like you have to get much more agile and adaptable. Like when you're working for a company for several years, you know that company inside and out, and you know the context in which things will work or not work. Like when I was at Ancestry, like it was interesting. You could kind of look at some of these new marketing channels and you kind of like be like, that's going to work for us. I know our demographic, I know our offering. And in this role, like you have to kind of like be agile enough to kind of start to understand a business and the value props and the audience and the customers and also just the culture of the company to understand, is this going to be a fit or not? And that could be like from a marketing messaging perspective, or it could just be like even just like attribution incrementality, like which tool or platform and methodology should they use? A lot of that's like dependent on the team and the company. And those are things you got to pick up and learn.
It's interesting because so as an operating partner, you work with a lot of different portfolio companies to develop and create and execute and actually execute all of these different marketing strategies. And I'm sure every company is different. Everybody's their own unique thing. But we know, I mean, attribution is a challenge across the board. I'm very fond of saying, like, if I had figured out attribution, I actually wouldn't be doing this. I would be on an island somewhere because I would have sold my company for way too much money because I would have figured it out and then I would be gone. But I would imagine like there's some common challenges that you see companies struggling with time and time again. What are some of those?
Yeah, well, you just stole mine, so thank you. I think attribution and measurement is still a huge challenge. And I think marketers got really lazy in the early days, pre-2021, when we just kind of relied on digital attribution and we were very happy with like a last click model. And then we said we're really innovative and we're using Google's data-driven thing, but ultimately it still wasn't effective or accurate representations of attribution nor incrementality for that matter, right? So I'd say that's still a very common challenge because right now, I think a lot of businesses are in this kind of COVID hangover state. And they're saying like, wow, we had a few really great years. And when everything's up and to the right, it's great and it's easy. And you can kind of just like rest on your laurels a little bit and just like do things a certain way. And now it's like companies that might be facing headwinds are starting to have to be like, what's really working for us? Where can I find that last 10, 15% of waste? How do I get my CAC paybacks tight enough where I'm feeling really good about things? And I'd say that's, probably the most common challenge right now. And then kind of hand in hand with that is like, you got to grow. Saying like, hey, the category Google search volume says we're down 10, 15%. That's great. But at the end of the day, we're all in the business of, hopefully growing that number. So a lot of what we're having discussions with companies now is, okay, let's look at channel diversification. Like, how do we mine the next pocket of growth? How do we unlock new audiences? How do I make TikTok really work for me for at least as long as we've got TikTok? Those are now, I think, some of the more common challenges that we're having. And it's frankly a lot more fun than saying, okay, let me talk through the very painful process of building an attribution model or bringing on a platform to support you in that, because that's where you can be like, oh, wow, look at all the new creative things I can do with TikTok that other platforms didn't afford me. So it's frankly a little more fun.
Honestly, that's why I started the offline function rate site up like 6 years ago, but it all very much came from like, I decided to focus on offline marketing about 8 years ago. I was real disillusioned when we started buying programmatic at scale and I started seeing viewability numbers, and I participated in a bunch of different trading desks and I was just like, hey guys, I don't think anybody is actually buying shit based on these ads. Like, you know what I mean? It was just like a moment where it was like, yes. I'm like real uncomfortable. I think we're buying pixel fires and we might be buying adult content. I don't want to be here no mo. So I had that, and I like to say, and I've been saying this line for years, but I love being at the intersection of different channels. I know exactly what you mean, because what I've found is just in my day-to-day work, we do a ton of work in offline advertising, but the very first channel that a lot of brands get started with in offline and audio is podcast advertising. And it's really hard to attribute for a lot of brands because they got hooked on the good from Meta and from Google. And I just had a conversation with somebody this morning about last click attribution still being their primary function of attribution. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I interest you in the words of the meme model. Like, I'm just like, can we please? But it's still a huge challenge. So like, when you start to think about diversification, I'm sure you have your eye on cookie deprecation and everything that's going to go on this year, which, spoiler alert, nobody actually knows what's going to happen fully.
You said this year, quelle surprise, it's now announced 2025, and Google blamed the EU on that, but...
Privacy Sandbox is going to be 2025?
Yeah, Google announced it maybe a month ago. They pushed it out. They blamed it on some EU considerations, but when they said they were going to launch in H2, I was like, well, it's not H2 means it's not Q3, and Google's not going to mess with Q4.
That's
sure enough.
Okay. I am working with outdated information, and I love that. I mean, literally, I was traveling for a bunch of the last few weeks, and now I'm just like, of course they moved it back again, but this has moved back from 23.
Too many offsites and HR meetings, Krystina.
I don't know what they pay me for at this point, Mark. I like to think I'm like a smart personality hire. It's just like my CEO is going to listen to this and be like, oh, jeez. But anyway, everybody knows what they signed up for at this point. But that is actually a good illustration of like, we don't know when whatever is going to happen is going to happen.
Oh, totally.
Right? And we don't know what it's going to be because we think we know about what impact Privacy Sandbox is going to have. We think we know roughly when it's going to happen. But all of this extra dev time could mean something different for its final like Super Saiyan form. So I guess my question is, how do you help companies think through diversification when they've been so heavily reliant on more traditional digital means of attribution? Like, is it hammering out attribution for them and helping them get disciplined? Like, what's the unlock for diversification?
It's really about the roadmap and also being really explicit around expectation management. I think a lot of people think like, I'm going to turn TikTok on and it's just going to work, or I'm going to turn on XYZ and it's just going to work. And in all fairness, people got spoiled by Facebook. Like they were just like, turn on PMax, Google works. Now there's channels where you actually have to learn what is the creative formula that works. How do I actually go to market? How do I buy this media? Like it's very different. And a lot of times what I'll do is like, we'll kind of create the roadmap and we'll say, look, to unlock this, you really need to understand attribution and incrementality. So that probably means you may be over-invested in certain parts of Google and things like that, but that'll give us some budget savings where hopefully it gives us some freedom to test in other areas where you can have greater impact. And let's just stack hands and make a plan. And then also agree on what results are good and what are bad ahead of time. So when they get I'm just going to make this a 0.5 return on ad spend their first week on TikTok, the CEO is not pulling the plug and saying TikTok didn't work, put it to bed. They're saying, great, we forecasted that we'll be at break even in a month. And that's a good thing. And just kind of creating that understanding and kind of alignment of expectations is so darn important. Like, yes, creative's critical. Yes, all these other things are critical, but actually managing expectations and the change management's like the hard part, in my opinion.
I like to say I'm a woman who likes her expectations managed. So just in life. And I just think that's a good thing to go into with stakeholders at any size, scale, anything. It's like, if you tell everybody what to expect and then it happens, I knew this was going to happen. It's a lot easier. We're not all just like, did you think it was going to work? I thought it was going to work. Did you? I don't know. I never want to get out of a campaign and being like, did you think that worked?
I've had budget submitted where someone will be like, this is our budget. And I was like, great, what do you think about it? They're like, there's no way we're going to hit this. I'm like, cool. Why are we having this conversation? Let's talk through what we'd have to believe, and let's have the what do you have to believe exercise, and let's come up with a budget you believe you can hit with current state, and then maybe we'll like build on some extras and we'll call that the upside budget. But let's not fool ourselves here.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's where it gets into like when you're thinking about how to goal and evolve goals for strategies as you're diversifying. I like what you said about Meta and Google. Like, I do think that they've actually made us lazy as marketers, even honestly as procurement functions. Like we work in house a lot, and some people are like, well, we can just pay one invoice here and we can pay one invoice there. And I'm like, yes, that's because Google owns the internet. So like, it's a little different. Like, it's a little different when we have to go out and pay media partners, for example. When you're aligning on expectations, it just feels like this is a very big like trust and credibility exercise, right? I have to imagine that's a foundational element of like a good partnership between an operating partner and a portfolio company. Like, how do you build trust and ensure alignment with the portfolio companies that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I kind of mentioned earlier, my job is to like help elevate the portfolio executives and talent, and our job is to help them succeed, right? I'll name drop a book that's like super old, but it's a banger. How to Win Brands and Influence People. It's very real. It's super helpful. It's just like, hey, you know what? Like highlighting people's wins, all these things. There's a million little tips and tricks in there, but it's really about elevating the people around you, being a great resource, genuinely trying to be helpful and having a can-do attitude. And then I try to find a quick win to build that trust, right? Like I wouldn't go in and say, hey, Krystina, my name's Mark. We're going to go and completely reinvent your budget and architect an MMM model. Like that's maybe a lot to bite off, but being like, hey, I think we can get you ranking on page or in ranks 1 to 3 of Google for this handful of keywords with a couple weeks of work. That's probably doable, right? And then I think the other thing I like to do is just build credibility by being a helpful resource. So if I know a marketer is presenting at a board meeting soon, you start to learn both sides of the table. You start to understand this investor has a hot button about XYZ. They're going to have an allergic reaction to this slide because of this. Let's save the unpleasant moment and talk to this person and help them reframe that discussion in a way that that investor is going to be able to have a productive conversation with them about, versus getting really upset at XYZ or this number or something that will be unproductive. And I found that kind of thing really helps to build that trust too, particularly when they go to that board meeting and they're like, oh, wow, you were right. That was so much better. And you're able to say, great, now let's talk about building an MMM.
Yeah, we'll get some wins on the board first before you're like, hey, so this thing that you've been doing for a minute, I have some ideas. That makes a ton of sense. When you just mentioned like an investor sitting there in a meeting there, I mean, I've worked at and with companies that it's like, well, we're going to be in a board meeting. So make sure I mean, to your point, before Google was a little more set it and forget it, it was like, make sure in this specific geo during these times, such and such results come up first. Or, and this is a crazy idea, we could just educate the investor. And I mean, to whatever extent, but you're like, maybe, first of all, if you search, don't click on it because it costs us money. And then second, if you search and you don't click on it, you're going to decrease my relevancy rate, my guy. So like, do you find that also there's, as an operating partner with such a deep well of marketing experience, do investors have a lot of interest in the inner workings of marketing to understand
I have the privilege of working with some of the smartest people I've ever worked at any job ever. And they're incredibly inquisitive and like intellectually curious, which is awesome. It's never like submit your numbers, Mark. Will this work? Yes or no? It's like, why? Oh, interesting. Like, what about that? Oh, is that why this company over here does it this way? And how does that pertain to the trade desk and how they do the thing? And it's really cool to have those discussions. And it's also really challenging at times too, because sometimes you get the fourth or fifth or sixth why, and you're like, you know what? I don't know. That's a good question. And then you go and do some research and maybe come back to them. But I think that's all. The intellectual curiosity is something that I think is hugely underrated, and I just find so much value in.
It's actually, when we came up with Right Side Up's values, we did it at a retreat and we did it in a room with just like 20 of us, I know. And it was like by committee, but the thing that kept coming up was curiosity, and it remains one of our values. I was that kid also that was just like, why? But why? But why? And eventually the answer is because. Until he gets to that point, I want to know why. I think it just serves us. Because like, doesn't it also serve you when you're testing assumptions? It's such a big part of marketing analytics in particular to be like, why did that happen?
Totally. And it is also just like, I feel like one of the biggest mistakes marketers tend to make is just giving up on things too early. And I like to believe like there's not a marketing channel that won't work. The question is at what scale can it work for you? And the fact that people have wholesale written off channels or said, we tested that and it doesn't work. Whenever I hear that, I'm like, someone didn't ask the right whys. Like there's a there. We just have yet to find it. Right. And that's fun. That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. My favorite is when people are like, oh, well, I tested podcasts and this show didn't work. Like recently somebody was like, yeah, I tested like this one very large show that everybody knows is synonymous with the channel. And they're like, it didn't work. I'm like, how much did you spend over how many months? It's like, oh, like 200 over like a month and a half. And I'm like, yeah, you think that's a lot of money on that one show? It's not. And also like, why? Like it's like, it would be like saying that television doesn't work and you bought 2 channels and like a 2-week flight, or Google didn't work and you bought 4 keywords over a day and a half and you're like, nah.
Still bonkers to me, like how we write off certain channels too. There was a news article last week and it was like digital video finally surpasses traditional video viewership, like traditional TV viewership last week. Which means that these 2 channels are roughly equivalent. And we've got people like investing tons of resources in digital video and they've never even looked at offline. And you're like, come on, guys, these are huge channels, but there's like this inertia that happens and people just don't even think about it, or they don't look at the data or ask the why to actually get to that killer channel or insight. That's job security though, at least, right?
Listen, I say that all the time. I'm like, oh my God, throw me at any marketing organization, give me like 3 to 6 months and I'll change their world when it comes to media mix. Because it just, to your point, like people don't realize, you know what the top reach medium in the country is still? Top
reach?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a stab at it. Radio?
Yes.
Whoa.
Because people are just like, well, who listens to the radio? I'm like, I don't know. Have you taken an Uber recently? And it's like, oh, dude, like over the air is still absolutely huge. And it's not just that. It's that people have the apps installed on their phones. And like, it's just, we tend to forget that even linear television, I hate to say it, the CPMs are still far cheaper than CTV, to your point. I mean, yeah, media can work. It's just a pricing game. Like, that's really it.
It's a pricing game. It's also just like, but remember, this is why I'm kind of excited for the current era of marketing, because we're going from like this digital laziness, like I'm just going to put $1 into Google or Facebook and it'll return $2 back. And my Google Analytics that only looks at clicks tells me it's so, to anyone, I'm now incentivized to use non-traditional means of, or maybe non-legacy means of tracking and attribution and measurement. And I can actually start to understand the impacts that those other channels had on my business. Whereas before I could say I ran a TV test, but it didn't show up in GA really. So I kind of like killed it early and yada, yada, yada. So I think you're finally able to create create good, healthy marketer behaviors, maybe that'll hopefully result in just more effective marketers as a whole.
I mean, we kind of have to at this point, just because to your point about pandemic era growth, like some categories saw such meteoric growth and now they're like, oh, I have to market. It's like, yeah, you do. And that inherent demand that was built up is not there. Other categories are exploding right now, but it's not going to be there forever. Like there's a really interesting phenomenon that's happened with a few different companies where you saw them just explode during the pandemic and then they're bankrupt 6 to 12 months later because they went really hard on their supply chain and decided to buy too much of the products that they have. And you're just like, oh.
And I think people tend to get caught up in trends or crazes or things like that. I'm one of those people that's I might be naturally curmudgeonly when it comes to certain trends. So when everybody was like, what's your metaverse strategy? I was the guy being like, you don't need a metaverse strategy. Just give it 6 months. This will be a fad. This is a fad. And I think I really focused on what is the value this is providing to the user, or what's the likely set of events that are going to happen over the next 18, 24 months? And should I believe that this current state is what it's going to be? And usually the answer is no, right? And I think you see a lot of that where companies reacted, and I give Apple a lot of credit. I think Apple's been kind of known for not having a lot of the headcount reductions that a lot of big tech has had to have. And I think it's because of the discipline that they had and recognizing, the environment that they were in and planning for the long term. And I give them a lot of credit for that. It's really easy when things are going gangbusters to just assume that they'll continue to do that way. I think it's a lot harder to just be like, hey guys, let's be a little conservative approach here. And I think I give a lot of credit to the organizations. And I have fortunately the opportunity to work with a lot of organizations that have been really thoughtful and planful around a lot of these, like what I'll call like 3 to 5 year trends. And that allowed them to be so much more successful than maybe had they not been as planful.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. I mean, every platform is replaced eventually, like everything. I don't know if I should admit this, but I don't have an active Facebook account because I just can't. But but to the point also about metaverse, but remember Clubhouse?
Yeah.
For a hot second, it was like, you better have a Clubhouse strategy. And it's like,
I'll one up you. This is going to date me a little bit. Remember Yo?
Oh, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember once I got an email from an executive at a company I worked at, and he was like, what's our Yo app strategy? And I was just like, don't worry about it. This thing's not going to be around in a year. And sure enough,
So it's funny. I feel like this is a good moment to take a pause. We have like a silly little thing that we do called the A/B test because marketers love a lot. We love an acronym. We love an A/B test. Some's work related, some's not.
Okay.
So I'm gonna rapid fire, but I might
can I
ask you to
win
share your work.
or pass the test? Like, what's the objective?
There are certain questions that I'm gonna be like, well, I mean, there's a right answer, but like I'm only gonna judge you somewhat.
Okay, let's do it.
There is no right answer. First, customer acquisition or customer retention?
Ooh, retention all day, baby.
Love it. AI generated content or human generated content?
Human generated content. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry. Animated or live action movies?
Live action, 100%.
Okay, podcasts or music?
Ooh, podcasts. I'm always trying to sponge up information.
Venture capital or private equity?
Well, I'm a little biased, but I would have to say private equity.
Well, I mean, I'm a little biased too. In-house or outsource?
It depends. It really does. I feel like you can't just pick one.
Fine. I'll allow it. Breakfast or dinner?
Oh, dinner, 100%.
LTV or CAC?
CAC payback period.
That's a loophole, but fine.
It's an important loophole, though.
Monetary or non-monetary incentives?
I feel like this is one. The answer again is going to be it depends on the individual.
I mean, I think we all like money, but it's not the primary motivating factor for who doesn't like money, but it's not the primary motivating factor for a lot of people. And I feel like that's a discussion that has happened more and more these last few years of okay.
110%. Yeah. I think a lot of people have had a lot of, what am I doing with my life kind of discussions, right? As a result of that and really changed careers even.
Uber or Lyft?
Lyft, 100%.
Oh, okay. Professionally produced or user-generated content?
I will say personal preference is professionally well-produced content.
I think there's a time. Listen, I will give you on this one. There's a time and place for both. And actually, that's a solid segue into just generative AI. So I have a million questions for you.
Wait, we go from a game to generative AI? Gen AI could have answered those questions.
We could pause the interview here. And then we could just make Robot Mark answer all of the questions.
Robot Mark doesn't need to answer the questions. I've already answered them. Let's move on to Gen AI. I'm excited for Gen AI. It makes sense to move on to.
I'm excited to talk about it in the context also of like growth and marketing, because I feel like there's a lot of what I think might be misplaced fear about the role of generative AI in growth and marketing. So you currently co-lead the generative AI practice at H.I.G. How do you see it impacting growth and marketing in the short term and the mid to long term?
Yeah, so I think there's that saying, I don't know where to attribute it to, but that we tend to overestimate the impact in the short term and underestimate the impact of new things in the long term. And I think that's incredibly true, especially with generative AI. I think Gartner released the hype cycle report and put Gen AI at like the peak of inflated expectations. I think it was last fall or something like that. I think it's very real. I would say short term right now, we're very much in this tactical AI world where we're applying point solution tools. And I'm seeing people creating a lot more variations and increasing testing velocity and using it for really cool creative applications. And I'm like, that's all cool, but it's incremental. I think long term, what I get excited about is in the context of marketing, personalized, tailored experiences that never would have been possible before. I feel like it used to be about segmentation, and that concept is about to be blown up. And it's going to be what's unique about Krystina and how can I tailor this marketing message specifically to her in a way that maximizes the likelihood that she will learn what I want her to learn about my product or service, right? And I think we've talked about personalization and we've talked CDPs and we've talked about how technology is going to enable all of that. And all it's really done is, added some recommendation widgets on websites and, maybe created some slicing on email files. But I think Gen AI actually presents the opportunity to really transform the marketing experience and the product discovery experience at a really impactful level. So I think that's an example of what I would call strategic AI, which will be long-term. And I think the other kind of thing you'll see a shift from is from these point solution tools. I think I use a website that lists a lot of AI tools. I'm going to load it right now. It's topai.tools. I'm not sure if we're supposed to plug anything, but I have no personal interest in this outside of using it. And they list 11,239 AI tools right now. So it's just absolutely bonkers, the sheer volume of companies that have popped up in the AI ecosystem. But most are point solution tools. I think what's more strategic and interesting is how can I use AI to create enduring differentiation to really win in my category? Where do I have unique data assets where I could do things that no one else in my category could do using Gen AI? Stuff like that, I think, is going to be hugely impactful. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more products that leverage it in a way to completely transform how work is done. And I'm mostly excited for a long-term strategic lens.
Yeah. And I think you touched on a couple of practical examples of Gen AI in marketing and that you found particularly impactful. But I mean, if there are any other examples of practical applications, I'm all ears. I think one of the ones that I'm going to ask you how you feel is about chatbots.
Oh God. Did you read my LinkedIn post about that?
Maybe. It. So obviously I'm going to ask you about that here. Let's unpack it. Tell me how you feel about chatbots, Mark.
All right. Here's the thing. I'm not anti-chatbot, but I am pro meeting the user and interacting with the user in the end consumer, I should say, in the way that they want to engage. And trying to force chatbots on people is, I think, companies doing it because they can, not because they should. And I feel like, an example of this, they've actually swapped it out a couple of weeks ago, I noticed, but I was loading Xfinity for my home internet and I got the app, and you open the Xfinity app to kind of do 2 to 3 things, right? And for a while they were forcing everybody who wanted to see their data usage into a chatbot to ask about their data usage. And it's just put a button that says data usage and shows me my data usage. That would be the optimal user interaction. But because I think everybody wants to AIify everything, you're just seeing these chatbots on homepages and everywhere and in product experiences that are not optimal or designed for the actual way that the user should be interacting. That said, still a big fan of chatbots for things like customer support, triage. How can I help the customer help themselves when they're seeking out customer support. I just don't need a chatbot to be tacked on to everything. It kind of reminds me of like early social internet, like Web 2, when everything had a like button because people didn't quite know how to have a social strategy, and they saw I could add a like button. That sounds like a good idea. And like buttons were everywhere. It was the same thing with like guest books on early internet. Like, remember those? Yeah, I know that's a blast from the past, but I think just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that's kind of my rant on chatbots. That said, when you talk about, you said, I think tactical tools or things like that, believe it or not, one of the ones I like quite a bit is Ada.cx. It's a really cool Gen AI chat bot effectively for customer support ticket remediation. And you can get some really good self-serve rates on that. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, right? But again, in the right context and interaction model, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's also, it's like shiny and new. I think a healthy dose of skepticism, because there's so much that we could be wasting our time and effort and energy on, right? Like there are so many distractions that you could just shiny red ball, like squirrel. It's really hard to stay disciplined. It's the dog from Up. It's the best. I'm very guilty of that. Like I will totally squirrel, both in life and in marketing sometimes. Then I'm like, no, that's not what's going to do it. That's not important to my business. That is not going to be the defining factor. I do think that over the midterm to long term, marketers who use AI intelligently will benefit. I mean, anybody who's used ChatGPT knows like some of these tools are really only as good as the prompts you put in.
Idioms I tend to use quite a bit as it pertains to Gen AI. One is Gen AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to harness Gen AI will. And I just remember like early internet days, everyone thought I was a genius because like I would come up with answers to problems and stuff. And I was like, no, I just knew how to use search operators on, well, at the time, Yahoo better than anyone else to find the answers that we needed and were looking for. And that's kind of like what the early internet was kind of like. People knew the early internet was going to be hugely impactful, but they didn't quite know how, right? And I think it's just incredibly important that people take time to learn and build and grow, because this is going to be genuinely, I was very anti-metaverse, not about NFTs, like all that stuff. Gen AI is an area where I'm very interested in. The stat, it was BCG that told me, they basically said throughout all of human history, increases in productivity have been met with elasticity and demand. And when you talk to agencies or others, they're like, oh my gosh, is my business going to exist a year from now? I was like, are you telling me that if Krystina goes to you and says, for the same amount of cost and time, I can now generate 50 times the amount of creative assets for you to test and get results from, and that will yield X% more impact? Are you going to say no to that? Like, no, you're going to sign up, right? I'm actually very optimistic for the future of applying the technology to have like really beneficial impacts.
Yeah, I think and we ask this question of everybody we have on, and our time is coming to a close, but I could talk to you for another 3 hours. There are really no real shortcuts to a holistic, repeatable growth marketing strategy, customer acquisition platform, et cetera. So one of the terms that we hear in general in marketing all the time is a growth hack. And so what I want to know is, what is your favorite growth non-hack?
Yeah, I hate growth hacks too. Like I've got on rants about the phrase growth hacking because it just inherently it's non-repeatable and you end up in a hamster wheel of like challenging situations. I would say my favorite growth non-hack is value prop testing. And this sounds so dumb, but you would painted door testing to understand what value props or product offerings should be created is a hugely underutilized yet hugely strategic thing that you can do. And you can do it in a legal way, you can do it in a compliant way. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance and thoughtfulness that has to go into it. But it's a practice I started at when I was at Ancestry, and it's been just hugely impactful. Like there's been times where you have a product leader like, we need to build this thing, people are going to react to it. And you're like, let me test that first. Like, I'm not sure I can put that in a banner ad or explain that quickly enough. Hugely important to be able to, right? So doing that testing up front before committing meaningful engineering resources is just like hugely impactful. And it's real data as opposed to stated data. Like I think people are inherently aspirational. So that's my growth non-hack if I had to pick one.
I love that. And you have dropped so much knowledge and different tools and like practical takeaways that people can take from this. So as advertised and more, Mark, thank you so much for all of your time this afternoon. It was such a pleasure. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Growth Talks. We hope you found our discussion insightful and fun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more valuable content. And if you're excited and ready to start up-leveling your growth strategies and execution, Right Side Up has you covered. Right Side Up is a leading growth marketing agency that has partnered with over 1,000 companies of all stages and sizes to help them meet and exceed their growth goals. With expertise across all growth marketing functions, we can help you evaluate product market fit, develop customer acquisition strategies, navigate executional challenges and staffing gaps, and make pivotal decisions with confidence. And whether you need one individual or a custom-built, full-service team, we'll find you the right A+ talent. Visit us at rightsideup.com to see how we can help you and your company grow.